Hey everybody, welcome to episode 2 of Failson Film School.
We're live and in color.
I'm Eli.
I'm Luke.
And today we're going to talk about Game of Thrones.
The discourse continues. It was over like 2 or 3 weeks ago, but we're talking about it still because we got some thoughts. We got a lot of thoughts. Got to get those out of our brain. They've been stewing. We've been stewing, right?
Yeah, I think we decided this is going to be a podcast we release every other week. We missed the week that it came out, but we're talking about it this week because who's not still thinking about that ending?
It's culturally important to American culture, this show about a bunch of people who are pretending to be fake British and conquering fantasy England is important to America somehow.
So before we get into Season 8 and the big finale, what were your thoughts on Game of Thrones before Season 8 started? What was your experience with the show?
I mean, I think I got into the show like everybody else who never heard of reading a book before got into the show, just because they saw like advertisements for it on HBO. Just like they were promoting it pretty heavily, and then they were like, "Oh yeah, Sean Bean's gonna be like our main guy. Everybody loves him. It's gonna be like Sopranos meets Lord of the Rings." And I was like, all right, sign me up because I like both of those a lot. And then I got hooked like everybody else did, fell in love with the show, and then as the series progressed, fell out of love with the show. Pretty much sums up my Game of Thrones experience. How about you?
Yeah, so basically same here. I didn't actually start watching the show until it was a couple years in, because I was a little skeptical about it, but then I finally started watching it, and I was also hooked really quickly. I stand by seasons 1 through 4. I think they're really good. I started reading the books after season 5, and I was waiting for season 6. I love the books now, so I'm really grateful to the show for that, getting me into A Song of Ice and Fire. But the last few seasons, I've been kind of disappointed.
Yeah, I had never read the books. I've read the Wikipedias for the books, so like they sound pretty cool, and I bet they're better than what we got for the show. But I think that like a big problem with a show like this is that it is like, first of all, it is an adaptation, so there is going to be stuff like in the books that may be important to like the series as a whole that's going to get cut, or it's going to get like rushed. You know what I mean? And I think that that's where this show's like biggest downfall came from, is that it started off like really good on a high note because they're adapting this like great source material, right? And I haven't read the books, so I don't know what exactly they cut out from like the regular the books and everything, but I assume like a lot of stuff does get cut and or like changed or twisted somehow. But they definitely hit all like the important points, like Ned's execution, the Red Wedding, stuff like that, like the big events. But that's just like this is how it goes with any kind of adaptation, is that it's going to be very different. It's like a separate piece than the source material. And then once you start like streaming away from the source material, when there isn't anything else like to adapt anymore, like they just kind of have to go on like where they've been told it's going, and then like fill in the blanks from there. I don't know. It's gonna get pretty rough.
Yeah, you're right on the money there, and it did get rough. I'll go into a little bit as we talk some of the differences between how the show got where it got and where the books look like they're heading, because obviously the show's done, but the books aren't.
Right.
But George R. R. Martin did tell the writers of the show, or the two showrunners at least, the big bullet points for the end game of the major characters. So we don't have the final 2 books in the series yet, but we do know some of the big changes that were made before they started straying that really show how the books are taking a different route to a similar endpoint. So now that we've talked about our feelings about the show before season 8, let's talk about season 8 as a whole. What were your feelings about the final season of the show?
Well, I think we have to move back, like not just season 8, but season 7 as well.
Yeah, that's a good call.
It's just like the biggest problems here is that the way that storytelling works in what like Game of Thrones does initially, right? Where it's a lot about these characters who get introduced and then like how they relate to the world that they live in. And like obviously there is a plot, there is like a through line that's going through. There's beginning, middle, and end, but there are character arcs in between about like how they affect everything that happens in this like very dense world, right? And the biggest issue is that when we got to this endgame material, it's just sort of like we threw all the character stuff out of the window to like service the plot. And that's, I mean, that started, I think it started more around in season, like, again, when the books stopped being adapted, like, or when they started changing up storylines or whatever. But you could clearly see it, like, get real bad in 7 and 8 because they're all just moving everybody into position for, like, the final endgame stuff. I think that there are some moments, but just going to, like, well, I guess with both season 7 and 8, there's some moments in both of them that are like, this is cool, right? Like I genuinely was like excited and thought it was a cool moment, but then there's a lot of it where it was like, it's kind of lame and stupid at the same time.
Yeah, I definitely feel similarly. I actually really like the first half of season 7 up to and including the Spoils of War, which is episode 4 with the loot train attack. I think that's a great sequence. And then I think the last 3 episodes of season 7 I thought really fell off the rails. Season 5 and 6 stray very far from the books, but are still including some material from them. Highly remixed, but there's still a little bit of the books in there. Season 7 and 8 are entirely uncharted territory.
Yeah.
So I think you definitely can feel that in both seasons. Even though there are parts of season 7 I really like, you can still really feel it kind of starting to swerve.
It sucks because it's something that it's like you get deeply invested in like TV shows on what as like a viewer, right? Because like when you go to see a movie, if it's a franchise thing, that's one thing, but you go into a movie, it's something like you're sitting there for almost 2 hours and you have to get invested in these characters that like you just meet, have to like learn all about them, and then whatever they're struggling with in the movie to see where it goes, right? And again, that's talking about something that doesn't have any baggage with it, even if it is like an adaptation that you may already be familiar with the original source material from. You only have that like 2 hours to get in and get out, and you have to make it feel like pretty clean. Have to make it feel like it was worth that viewing time of the 2 hours. Whereas with a TV show like Game of Thrones it's like it's like adapting these epic kind of novels that it has to be a TV show because of how massive it is. But then because it's a TV show, you're watching these characters over years with like, what is it, like 10 hours every year of your life is being like invested into these like characters that you want to like root for, you want to hate, and you want to see where like the story goes and where it's going to like make its commentary on. And then when that starts to like fall off, it's just like the feeling of like frustration that you put in so much of your time into trying to enjoy something, and then it's like, they didn't deliver what I thought I was gonna get my like fulfillment out of this story from. It sucks.
Yeah, TV is a much more high risk, high reward kind of game because you have to understand that people are going to be coming back every week, and I think actually. You talked about how it was 10 hours of your life basically every year, and the last 2 seasons, season 7 was only 7 episodes, and season 8 was only 6 episodes, and I think losing that time actually hurt them. I think you're talking about with losing some of the character stuff, like season 8 starts with them finally arriving in Winterfell, right? After a long journey there. We didn't get any of the journey there. In seasons 1 through 4, we would have had a full episode of everyone making their way to Winterfell.
It was like 3 episodes in season 1 of them just going to King's Landing.
Yeah, exactly. Like... So the fact that we lost moments like that where we could have had some characters set up, we could have seen the Jon and Dany relationship maybe start to fray a little bit more, even as it's just the two of them confined from the world, kind of see their interactions before they get all the political pressures of season 8 put on them. We can, if we had some of those moments that I think we lost, I think it would have felt like a much cleaner arc for both of them.
Yeah, if season 7 like happened the way it did, right, and then season 8 is just them prepping for like the war with like the White Walkers, and then season 9, in theory, would be them like doing the actual like end game for the throne stuff. I think it might have been a better delivered experience, right? Because now you have time to actually give out everything, like every kind of plot beat that you want to do, give every character a moment that you want to have them to see, like, and have them grow, and have it not feel like people are just teleporting from one place to the other and everything. Give it that sense of scale back to where it was at the beginning of the show. But I don't think it's everybody on, like, the production staff or whatever, but I think it's just a lot of them, like, the people who are in charge of running the show just got tired. Like, they just got tired of running it. And it makes sense if, like, you're a producer and a showrunner on it and a writer as well, and you dedicated, almost 10 years, 8 years, I guess, of your life to running this show, and, like, you kind of just at one point you want to, like, move on to something else, right?
Yeah, and the showrunners did get hired on to do the next Star Wars movie, so they have, bigger things coming.
Yeah.
The one of the bosses at HBO has said, we would have been happy for them to do more episodes, more seasons, but they respected the showrunners' desire to tell the story in the amount of time they wanted to tell it, and I think, they could have used more time. I think they could still have done it in 8 seasons if they had 10-episode seasons, but... If we're talking about our fantasy version of the show, they cut so many characters from the books that a lot of fan speculation is that Cersei and Jaime will not even be alive at this point in the books. By the time the White Walker threat is being dealt with by Jon and Dany, Cersei and Jaime are probably already going to be dead.
I think that they probably fucked up the order there, but it does make... I don't know, because it's weird, right? This whole, like, narrative... about, like, what Game of Thrones is, like, about, and you, like, know it from the beginning, right? Like, from the first episode, is that none of the conflicts over, like, who wins the throne and, like, the power for, like, who controls Westeros matter at all. While it's the most interesting part of the show, in my opinion, where, like, these little nuances and who's playing who and like, who's gonna win the throne in, like, in their conquest or whatever, while I think that's the most interesting part about it, and, like, to watch and to see these characters, like, interact, I think that this over-looming threat of the White Walkers, this natural force that nobody understands, to just come down and, like, wipe them out, is, like, the point of it is just, like, the throne's meaningless. Like, there's a war in the north that's gonna threaten everybody, not just the people who are down south and, like, who are trying to, like, keep the power, right? It's gonna threaten everybody, and that's what they really need to be worrying about, is that there's this greater threat that is more important than who gets to sit on, like, a fucking chair, right?
Yeah, there probably will still be some sort of struggle for the throne, and probably a similar destruction of the throne itself after the White Walkers have been dealt with in the books. But Cersei and Jaime will already have been dealt with. There's another Aegon in the books who probably will have been dealt with at that point and been a major... Or maybe not. Maybe Aegon will be the character they have to take King's Landing from. But it's going to be such a different context because... Aegon is not as big a character as Cersei clearly is. Cersei in the show is an even bigger character than she is in the books, and she's a major character in the books.
Right.
So the context of the whole situation is going to be different. The character nuance is going to be different. And I'm not saying that makes the show bad automatically, but I'm saying they did not necessarily set up for the ending that they delivered.
Yeah, I think that just, like, the order, it's weird because I would think that the order would be that they deal with the throne stuff first and then they go fight the White Walkers, but they set it up so that they fight the White Walkers first and then they have to go deal with the throne stuff. And I think that order, like, ultimately and, like, is satisfying because it's just like, okay, we dealt the White Walker threat, now we have to go, like, do, like, the final thing. This is literally called Game of Thrones. Like, it should be the most, they're, like, telling you that's the most important part, but at the same time, it's like, this is the show that killed the guy who was on every single poster in the first season. Like, why would it could be called Game of Thrones, and then the more important thing is, like, it's not about the throne at all, right? Like, that would be funny. It's funny to me.
Yeah, and, to some extent, they swung at that. They had Drogon melt the throne in the finale, which is a gesture at meaning. And... taking the show on its own merits, it is called Game of Thrones as opposed to A Song of Ice and Fire. I think that says a lot right there, that title change.
Yeah.
But focusing on Game of Thrones is kind of a mission statement, and they stuck to that to some extent. I do try to judge the show on its own merit without comparing it to the books constantly, but when it veers off the rails the way it did, it's hard not to. So I will try to resist every little detail, but,
All right, let's just do it. Let's go. Season 8. What's up?
All right, so let me ask you this. What do you think was the best and the worst episode of Season 8? Let's start there.
Okay, you're going to not like what I have to say.
I bet.
The best episode is Episode 5. The worst episode is Episode 3.
Okay. I actually don't hate you for that. I think the best episode is episode 2, A Night of the Seven Kingdoms. And I agree with you that the worst episode is episode 3.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Long Night is really a bad episode of television.
Oh my gosh. Like, if you just break, like, if you're a dork and you're like a military strategist and you break down their strategy of fighting these ice zombie guys, like, their strategy is fucking terrible. They should have just lost and got steamrolled.
Yeah, nothing in the episode makes a lick of sense, honestly.
Nope.
Geographically, like, as far as character motivation, as far as just basic military strategy, as you're saying. Like, other smarter people than us have gone over the military strategy in detail, but man, does it not make any sense at all.
But also just, like, the narrative strategy, right? Where there is a theme throughout the whole show where it's like, okay, there is this person who's, like, the prince that is promised, that, like, we get introduced to in season goddamn 2, where, like, Melisandre thinks that it's going to be Stannis, but it's actually, like, probably Jon, but it could be Jon or Dany, based on, like, how all the categories, like, fit everything and whatnot. And they just don't deliver on that at all. Like, it's supposed to be this set-up conflict between Jon and the Night King, or at least, like, the Night King and Bran to some extent, because they've been set up. Like, it's the Night King, like, and the Starks, really, but then they just have, like, a big surprise, I think, just to have this surprise. But if this happens in the books, you'll have to tell me, because I'm not going to read it. If this happens in the books, I hope it's set up a lot better with Arya actually, like, killing the Night King. And while that's cool, it's, like, a cool moment that she just, like, jumps out of nowhere and, like, Deus Ex Machina just, like, murks him real good. Although they did set it up where, like, she does, like, the little trick when she was, like, fighting Brienne.
Yeah.
So, like, it's not, like, something that it's like, oh, she just didn't get lucky, you know? Like, she knew how to do this trick and, like, practiced it before. And she is a trained assassin. Although, a little weird because, diatribe, wouldn't, like, the Faceless Men, like, they're this league of assassins who are very secretive. She just, like, leaves, just pieces out, like, after learning. She fails, first off. She doesn't actually learn everything. She, like, fails the final test, but somehow gets the magic powers of the Faceless Men anyway. Never uses it again besides season 6, right? Or, like, season 7.
She doesn't use it at all in
She doesn't
season
use
8.
any magic at all.
And I'm going to say, I actually don't have a problem with Arya having, like, the ability to kill the Night King the way she did. Yeah, she has the skills to do that. But narratively, why was it her?
Oh, because Melisandre just showed up and said, you have to kill the Night King.
Right, and the showrunners have straight up said that they did that to be a twist. Like, they chose her because it was unforeseen.
I'm all for it, but at the same time, I'm like, it's one thing if, like, you just want to twist your audience just to be like, oh, this is an unpredictable show that, like, you can never guess, but then at the same time, it's like, well, you are under-delivering on all this setup, right?
Right.
It's like, I'm gonna go, because I'm a big pro wrestling fan, it's like when you're pushing the babyface to beat the top heel, and then, like, you just have someone else beat the heel instead, that you just, like, didn't really push at all.
Yeah, it would just be narratively incoherent.
It's not narrative at all. It's not good for business, first off, because it's like, then this babyface is dead in the water. And that's basically what happened, because people were like, well, John's a little bitch boy. like he just constantly fails. And that's okay, you know? If they wanted to keep it and they, like, had Winterfell, just, you know what, if, like, you want to do that, just have Winterfell just get murked. Like, just get him out of there. Just, like, blow up Winterfell by the, like, they just take it over.
I really thought that was a possibility.
That would have been cool, right? Like, Bran could have still survived. They could have, like, got him out of there somehow. And I don't know. They would have to do the whole choreography of the battle, everything completely different. But, like, if they lost Winterfell, then, I mean, it's obviously a completely different show. But it's just, like, it's still, just, like, narratively, they're setting up for Jon and the Night King to face off. They do, but it feels anticlimactic. And then when Arya kills them, like, yeah, that's a shock and everything. But it just, like, ruins all this setup for like, literally the first season. Like,
yeah, it works for Arya's plot to some extent. Her whole thing, you know, they don't really follow up on the Faceless Men that well. But her whole thing has been a crusade, you know, against death, even from season 1 with Syrio Forel, What Do We Say to Death Not Today, which they do bring back in season 8. So I don't hate it for her. I just think, yeah, so the Night King is not even a character in the books. to be clear, the White Walkers don't have, like, a leader king
Okay.
like they do in the show. There is a book character in the mythology called the Night's King, who was a leader of a Lord Commander of the Night's Watch.
He fucked a White Walker, right?
Yeah, he fucked a White Walker. Exactly.
See, I read the Wikipedia.
Yeah. So he's just a completely different character. They kind of took the name, and whatever. That's fine. But Jon probably will have a much larger role to play in the books. In the show, I really feel like he didn't do anything in episode 3. He and Dany were on their dragons a bit. They completely misused their dragons. Like, those should have been much more powerful in that battle. And Jon just got pinned down for a while. He ran at a White Walker and almost got killed. Like, he came off looking really bad. And basically everyone except Arya came off looking really bad.
Yeah,
in episode 3.
everyone was just not competent at all except for Arya.
And, like, I guess Melisandre, like, she did what she needed to do.
And I guess Bran did what he needed to do. Just be Bran even came in confident because he was like, "I'll just go find the Night King now." And then like he just like what he warged into a bunch of ravens.
He went to the ravens and we never see him again.
Like
until
nothing
the
happens.
End. Yeah, like he doesn't do anything with his warging, which they did so much setup for.
I'll take that back. Theon was very competent in what he did. Like, of course he was gonna die that episode, but like. Shout out to the boy Theon who just laid it on the line for everybody. Yeah, he's the guy. He's the real one.
I love Theon. I think he clearly had to die protecting Bran. I think that's a necessary plot move. Mm-hmm. But I don't love the actual execution of the way they did it, just having him run at the Night King. It's like, couldn't he have, like, just stalled the extra minute until Arya got there? Like, the timing was not super tight there.
But that's the thing is that the Night King just drips like swag, so like he's gonna take his time just like murdering a cripple kid. Like he's gonna be like, this kid can't fight me. Like I'm already living rent free in his head. Like I'm just gonna walk up to this little bitch boy and just slit his throat real nice, right? Because he's trying to keep it clean. Like he's trying to keep it like he's got those fresh leather and shit, which he doesn't like really need, right? Like I don't understand why they're even wearing clothes to begin with, because they're always ice all the time. It's not like they're gonna get fucking cold and shit. Like you wear clothes to keep yourself warm, right? So
it's a good point.
Why are they wearing clothes? They're just ice people.
Yeah, it doesn't really actually make any sense. And like people pointed out last season, like how did they forge the chains to drag the dragon out of the water? Like they're ice people. How did they forge chains? Whatever. It doesn't matter.
Maybe they borrowed some. I don't know. They didn't have to forge
Maybe they had the giants do it. Yeah, they have giants who are
they control zombie people, so whatever.
Yeah. Whatever.
That's why it's better when the bad guys are fire bad guys, because it makes more sense when you're like, oh yeah, of course they could forge these kind of things.
Yeah, that's actually one of the best parts of Avatar: The Last Airbender is the way the Fire Nation, being the Fire Nation, allows them to be technologically more advanced than a lot of the others, because they're powered by, actual power, like fuel, fire, coal.
Right.
Yeah. Good world building.
Best part about Lord of the Rings is when they're taking down the woods and the Ents are all sad because they're like, oh, they're taking us down. They're using them to make Uruk-hai.
Yeah, so back to a show that flopped its world building.
Well, it didn't flop its world building. It was very successful in its world building.
For the most part.
They just stopped caring about it. They just stopped it just stopped making sense at a certain point.
Yeah, to go back to the Jon and Dany stuff. So the show mentions the prince that was promised and how they're supposed to lead us out of darkness. What it leaves out, and I won't go into it too much from the books, but basically a part of the Prince Who Was Promised story where he has to kill his wife by stabbing her in the heart to forge Lightbringer, the sword of heroes that Melisandre does talk about in the show, that she pretends is the sword she sets on fire for Stannis. So that is part of the show, but they do leave out the Nissa Nissa part, which is a sacrifice. And they do exactly that in the finale when Jon stabs Dany directly in the heart. Mm. And you have to wonder, okay, so that probably is a similar endgame as what we're going to get in the books. I don't know if the context is going to be exactly the same, but why would they leave out so much of the prophecy? Did they think it was going to make it too obvious? Did they just not want to deal with prophecies more than they already were? Did they not want to have the whole who's the real prince that was promised, Dany Jon thing, because they're already doing the who's going to be the real leader of Westeros, which was a feint in the first place for Bran? I don't know. I
don't know either. I think that they set it up because it was like adapted in the books, and then they didn't like follow through on it and everything because they just figured that either the audience is going to forget about this or they just don't really care, right? Or they just didn't care because they were like, let's They already knew they were going to go with the surprise Arya, so they were just like, well, fuck prophecy, even though that they set up like multiple prophecies down the line, right? I don't know, man. But before we get really into like the last episode and just like the end as a whole, I want to know why you think episode 2 was the best episode, and I'll defend episode 5.
Yeah, that's a good call. Let's talk about episodes 2 and 5. Because honestly, I don't have much to say about episode 1. It was just kind of a
whatever. Episode 4. Episode 4's only like redeeming quality is that like they killed another dragon, and that was cool, and then made it seem like it was a threat. But then they're just like ixnayed on that in the next episode.
Yeah, episode 4 was like pretty mediocre. So episode 2, definitely my favorite of the season. I think like the only great episode of the season, if I'm being honest. It was written by Brian Cogman, who's been with the show from the beginning. He's written some not so great episodes, but for the most part, his episodes are some of the best of the series. He has a real respect for the characters and the material, and a lot of the material in episode 2, to me, felt like the only time this season where the characters were true to themselves and how I knew them for the bulk of the show, if not necessarily like season 7.
Yeah.
Because you get like the Jaime and Brienne stuff, which was all really great. I think a big highlight of the season.
Yeah.
Easy. I think you get some of the Sansa Dany stuff, which I honestly wish we got a little bit more of in the season, because their tension felt a little convenient for the plot. I get why those characters would have tension, but episode 2 felt like the one where we actually got to see it play out in a meaningful way with that little conversation they have.
Mm-hmm. Pod sang a sick song.
Yeah, Pod sang a song, always great. Yeah, you just get this breath before
they rode
the
some
storm.
Dragons, right?
Yeah, no, that was episode 1.
That was
episode 1, and honestly, I didn't love the dragon riding scene in episode 1 because it's like it didn't feel like there was much actual.
It was mad corny.
Character motivation. It was just like, look, they're gonna ride a dragon, so we can not have him ride a dragon for the first time.
Oh, Arya fucks.
Yeah, Arya fucks during episode 2. Yeah. I kind of liked that. Like it was really nice this season to see them give both Sansa and Arya more character and more actual feeling and humanity.
And she needed it, like, because that's what she needed to defeat the Night King. Ultimately, was to lose her virginity. That was the twist. Is that
sticking with the pointy end, Gendry.
Fucking once is more powerful than fucking your aunt. Like like incest bad. That's been the show from the beginning. Incest bad, but fucking like regular like hot people good. So episode 2 definitely felt to me like the episode where I felt like, okay, these are the characters I know and love. It gave me a little bit of hope for the rest of the season that was quickly dashed by episode 3. But let's talk about episode 5. So I thought it was actually a pretty well produced episode. I think that's why I defend it, is because it's technically wise like way better than the first battle episode.
Yes.
They're just really good like shots in it, and like the one where they do the long take of Arya running in like the street and everything, fucking mwah. Also get to see like the end of some of my favorite characters in the show, like Euron Greyjoy. like no, he just goes out like the most like the most like dirtbag guy way possible, where like I know that in the book he's supposed to be like, he literally is like, I'm gonna become a sea god, like I'm gonna like fuck a dragon like type dude, right? That's like, he's like actually like a huge threat in the book. But I love show Euron because he's just a slimeball dirtbag who's a dumb idiot who like somehow just like fucks his way to the top, right? And then gets to just like, he just like, I'm gonna first, he like, doesn't he want to like fuck Daenerys at first? Am I wrong about that?
In the books, he's trying to fuck Daenerys.
Okay.
Yeah, and in the show, I think his original plan was to go there, but then Yara and Theon beat
go
him
instead.
To it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so like he just wants to like he literally just is Donald Trump. Like he's a skinnier, dirtbaggy more and younger version of Donald Trump, who just is completely stupid, like definitely racist. Definitely but he owns everybody. Like he literally just he kills a dragon in this, like his shit gets fucked up in the end, whatever. Like yeah, he's a bad guy, but he gets to kill Jaime Lannister, which is great because he's just like, I'm not going down until I kill like a prince, right? I don't know. I loved it. I loved Euron. Shout out to the homie.
I would like to debate that he killed Jaime Lannister. I really think the ceiling did
I think the ceiling did that really, but he fucked up Jaime Lannister pretty good. And that's all I give him a lot of credit for fucking him up pretty good. Because Jaime could have maybe got there. I mean, Jaime maybe could have got there beforehand, right? And saved Cersei if Euron didn't come and fuck his day up. No, but I think that the reason why this episode is good to me, and it's the best episode in the season, is because they've built up Dany as one of the good guys, right? She goes throughout Essos with her dragons and frees a lot of these people, like from slavery and everything, which is good. Like, I'm anti-slavery as on a whole, but she's kind of cruel to like the people in charge, which is like, again, they should definitely get their punishment or whatever. And obviously, like, all the slaves and some of the people of those cities are gonna like her as a result. And yes, she frees these cities, but she moves from city to city, right? And she doesn't stay in the same city within, like, maybe, like, a couple of months. I don't know really how, like, the realistic timeline between it, right? But she doesn't stay in the city for long, and she kind of just moves from city to city, liberating the people. But the power just goes back up to the top, and those people, like, are enslaved again. Because isn't that, like, what the Siege of Meereen was? Is that all the other people from Slaver's Bay were coming into Meereen to mess Dany up?
Yeah, pretty much the reason she stays in Meereen is because she fucked up Astapor
and Yunkai.
Yunkai, yeah.
Because she fucked up their whole, like, it's basically she's just like an allegory for regime change. She goes in, does something that she believes is good, and on a surface level it is pretty good. Like, again, not a fan of slavery here. Don't think that those fake people should be in slavery. But her whole, like, arc is just going to these places, proving how dominant her army is, and just regime changing it, and fucking up and destabilizing the area, right? So when she comes over to Westeros finally, and she's like, I'm going to reclaim the throne, she just is continually going to do the same thing that she has been doing to these other places. We just haven't seen it from the perspective of someone living in Westeros before. We're seeing it from Dany's perspective of her doing this good thing and freeing all these people, right? So when she comes in and she, like, yeah, it was her change in tone, like, suddenly just like, oh, she just made, like, a snap decision. I mean, we kind of knew from the start of the episode that she was probably gonna, like, fuck off and destroy King's Landing anyway. Like, it was pretty obvious to me that it wasn't just, like, a snap decision, that it was something that was built up to. But you kind of have to, like, see it from her perspective, that there's all of these people who don't like her. She's a foreign invader. Her best friends are getting killed. Like, one of her advisors who loved her to death literally got killed the episode before. Her other best friend, like, her gal pal, like, got killed as well. Like, Missandei's been with her for a while. Like, all these people that she brought over to help her take the throne are just being taken away from her, and it's all directly in related to just, like, her conquest and trying to take that throne back from Cersei. And so when she goes to burn the whole city down, and she goes Mad Queen, yeah, like, it is kind of, like, on the nose now. But I don't think it was something that it was. I know that they said, oh, it was like a snap decision, but I can see that, like, you can make a case for it, and I'm trying to make the case for it, that it's something that is in line with her character from what we've been shown in the story. And I think it's a great perspective that we're seeing, like, this version of Dany, where it's these people who don't really like her, don't really know her, maybe even. They don't maybe not even have an opinion. They just don't want to fucking die from dragonfire. It's a good use of actually the dragons this time, because it literally is like she just nuked King's Landing. And I don't know, I just thought it was excellent technically wise, and just great. She is the bad guy.
Yeah, I think this is a case where I don't necessarily hate what happened, I just don't love how it happened, and it's hard to talk about the episode in a vacuum. I think, on some level, I would have liked episode 5 more, and they wouldn't have even had to change much about it if the season leading up to it had signaled at her arc a little more clearly, I thought. You're definitely right that the show builds up that this is how Dany thinks. She thinks, I'm a liberator, I go from city to city, and I free people. And that is how she sees things, and you're right that we just hadn't seen it from the people she was liberating before, like someone who lives in King's Landing, like you're saying. I think the difference is, and the show kind of strays into this in a problematic way, is when they kind of conflate slavers and Cersei. I mean, Cersei is a horrible leader and a terrible person who has murdered a lot of people, but slavery doesn't exist in Westeros. Certainly, capitalism is its own form of slavery, and feudalism's even worse. But I'm not actually comparing economic systems to legitimate chattel slavery like existed in Essos.
No, yeah.
And so to have a city full of innocent people, by and large, the people in King's Landing were not, like, necessarily lords and ladies who are culpable for the horrible things that have been inflicted on the people of Westeros. They were the people of Westeros who came to King's Landing for safety. And they do point out Cersei brought them in to use against Daenerys because she was trying to call Dany's bluff, like, you wouldn't burn all these innocent people. But the point is that they are innocent people, and the slavers are not innocent people. In episode 6, to get into that for just a second, there was a conversation between Tyrion and Jon where Tyrion basically says first she came for the slave owners, and then she moved on. And I definitely recommend everyone check out the Not a Cast podcast. Emmett goes into this in a really great way. You can also check out his Twitter at Poor Quentin.
Actually, don't check out their podcast because our podcast is better.
Yeah, our podcast is like way better. But he makes a really good point about the way that really uncomfortably talks about this really famous speech about the Holocaust. Like, first they came for the trade unionists and I didn't say anything because I wasn't a trade unionist, and then they came for the communists and I didn't say anything because I was not a communist, and then they came for the Jews, and it's clearly a reference to that. And I think that conflation, as Emmett points out again, is really problematic, and I felt uncomfortable when I heard Tyrion say that in episode 6 because it sounded way too much like that for comfort in a context that was not the same. So I do think episode 5 is actually really well produced. I don't love Dany's turn in the moment, but they had made it really obvious that was going to happen in the episode. I mean, from the moment Tyrion says, if they ring the bells, you won't do it. I was like, oh, okay, the bells are going to go off and she's going to do it anyway. Like, it's obvious.
But even when it isn't obvious, like, when the heel turn happens, it's still great. I think it was great. I think
it's a heel turn that, you know, whether or not everyone saw it coming, and I had gone back and forth on something like that happening. I didn't love the idea, but I knew it was a possibility. That is a legitimate place for the story to go. I did not love how they got to it. I thought this is another case where if they had 10 episode seasons in 7 and 8, we would have seen more of those little character changes and a smoother arc that maybe episode 5 wouldn't have had to be that different.
I don't know, because in the whole season, she goes up north to help them fight, right? But during her time up north, Dany is constantly saying that, like, yeah, but you guys are backing me. Like, oh, you're backing me. Like, she's not even like she's saying it nicely, but she's implying that, like, you're fucking backing me or I'm going to just, like, burn the house down. Like, there's there's that underlying threat to Sansa. She does the political move by, like, making Gendry a lord, right? By like saying that, like, by legitimizing Gendry being
smart
like
move by Dany.
Exactly. Like, her goal first and foremost has always been the Iron Throne. She's just going up north because she's like, well, like, if I'm gonna rule, like, I'm gonna beat these ice people so, like, I can actually rule. And it's also a smart political move because she's trying to do it so that she curries favor with people. Be like, hey, I literally saved you from a bunch of ice zombies. Like, could you please, like, respect me? Like, don't you guys, like, hate Cersei? But it's just like, yeah, like, we don't like Cersei, but, like, you're gonna come and murder us. Like, I don't want to be murdered, so I'm gonna stay here and support Cersei because, like, at least she's not murdering me.
But, like, the people she made that pact with basically did follow her to King's Landing. Like, Jon and all his...
Right.
They all supported her, you know, on the march south after they had taken care of the White Walkers. Sansa still wasn't, like, super happy about it. But she got the support of the people who promised to support her for the most part. So it's not like the people she was burning in King's Landing had personally betrayed her. And, you know, it is meant to be a bad thing that she killed all those people. Like, they are innocent people, and this is her heel turn. But it didn't feel to me super accurate to the character that I had come to know from Daenerys. Like, I get the thinking and I get the arc. It all makes sense as a sketch when you lay it out, but actually watching it, the experience of it did not connect. I like it sketched out in the broad strokes, but the actual experience of it fell flat.
I could see that. I think it connected with me. I could see how, like, I was a Dany fan, like, at the beginning, right? Because she's comes in, she's sold to a warlord, a horse lord, and, like, rises to power, rises to this dominance. But she's also just kind of, like, she had to murder and kill, like, her way to get there. And she's been known to murder and kill before. And yeah, we've only seen it where she only murders and kills the bad guys. But if she has to murder and kill to get there, I don't think it's too far off where she is going to murder and kill people to, like, innocent people to get what she wants. And she wanted that Iron Throne real bad. And nothing was going to stop her. And she was the most powerful one. So I think that it makes, like, I don't think she should have lost. Like, she had to win.
Right.
But, like, at least, like, the war with Cersei, I knew she was, like, I knew she wasn't ever going to win the Iron Throne. Like, you know from season 2, and people were like, if anyone really thought that she was going to win the Iron Throne, like, fuck off.
Yeah,
like,
that was clear.
Yeah, it was very clear. It made a lot of sense that, like, that it was gonna, like, it had to happen too, because it was all in ash, right? Like, when she goes into the throne room in season 2, if you're talking about foreshadowing, right? She goes into the throne room in season 2, it's covered in ash. It's not fucking snow. So someone's gonna, like, it's gonna get burned down. What's gonna burn it down? There's only 2 candidates. Either, like, Cersei was gonna set off the dragon, the wildfire, which she could have did, and it did go off after, like, some of the caches looked like they went off in the scene, which narratively it's like, okay, like, at least you're being consistent there. But, like, it's either going to be that, or Daenerys has to do the heel turn and burn it down with her dragon fire. And that's what had to happen. And that's my thoughts. Do you want to just hit the last episode then?
Yeah, so we covered episode 5. Let's go into the finale.
Woo!
What were your general feelings about the very last episode of Game of Thrones?
I'm pissed because the betting line was on Bran, and I should have bet it, but, like...
Yeah, I don't know how everyone saw that coming somehow in the betting pools.
I think because a lot of the smart money comes in on Bran, and then a lot of, like, production stuff might have got leaked, so they were like, don't tell anybody, but they're like, I was literally the boom guy, and Bran says that he's the king now. Also, speaking of production, I just want to, like, hold back. A lot of people were noticing the shots of coffee and, like, water bottles in this season. I'm kind of, like, pissed off about it. Not because it's like, oh, yeah, that's, like, sloppy or whatever. Well, because it is sloppy. But it's just like, man, they really just didn't get enough coverage. Like, they just didn't see that. Or, like, the only good take of them in, like, the editing room that they could use was the one with the water bottle in it. Like, Nobody noticed that. Like, come on, dude. This is a fucking multi-million-dollar show that you're producing here.
The fact that they didn't notice it on shooting day is not as surprising to me as no one noticing it in the editing suite for, like, however long it must have taken to edit those episodes.
But even if, like, you didn't get coverage of, like, if someone noticed it in there, they're not doing one take of Dany, like, looking in the background. But, like,
even if they hadn't gotten the coverage of a scene without the coffee cup or the water bottle in it, they still could have edited it out with CGI. Like, they've already done with the coffee cup after the episode already aired. They went back and fixed it. Like, they could have done that in the editing suite in the first place if anyone had noticed.
Amazing.
So
I feel like they just did it on purpose because they just, like, fuck this show. Like, it's going. Maybe the editors are just like, this fucking sucks.
Their little rebellion.
Yeah, their little rebellion. Shout outs to the editors of Game of Thrones,
who actually do a pretty good job for the most part.
Yeah. Yeah, so shout out to Bran, too, for... Okay, was it ever established that Bran could see the future? I know he has visions, but can he see the future?
Like, so he gets his visions of the future. Like, we've seen him get visions of the future before. And, like, he saw himself becoming king, theoretically, which is kind of interesting.
It's kind of dope because that's like a hard flex that he was just like, that was the best line in the episode where he's like, yo, why do you think I came all this way, dog? Like, it's like, hell yeah, dude, you take that throne. And also, like, great arc for Bran because it's like, first episode gets knocked out of a window
by the Kingslayer,
right? And then becomes the king. Like, come on, dude, that's awesome. Like, I'm into that. And if that's how it really ends, like, good.
People have been going back and looking at the books for hints about that being the ending. People are finding some interesting stuff. I do think there's a good chance that will be the ending in the books. And that is an ending that it surprised me a lot when it happened. But looking back now, I can see it being an interesting ending. I think this is another case for me where I like it in theory, but the way it played out didn't feel super satisfying.
I agree. I have like some problems with like people's takes really on the episode. I don't really have a lot of problems with the episode in general. There's some stuff that like I wish like could have been different, but I think that like it for all of the plot lines that they still had to wrap up, it wraps everything up pretty okay. Although just like Grey Worm kind of pissing off, just giving up the power that they seize there, kind of just like this kind of lame, but I understand it's like if he really like it's just a couple of Unsullied, I mean not a couple, like it's an army of Unsullied guys, but versus every other house in Westeros, like the Unsullied are just gonna lose by numbers, right?
And they got a lot of weird power in the final episode of, like, getting
Right.
to banish Jon. Like, they somehow got to make that happen.
Well, I mean, it was like the Unsullied are gonna leave. They probably worked out that, and then they were
Yeah.
like, "But we want this, this, and this before we fuck
Yeah.
off." Which, like, if you're on that bargaining platform, because they could have held King's Landing for a while and then
true.
eventually kill a bunch of people, right? And I just don't think anybody wanted that after another war, which it makes sense to me.
Yeah.
But I mean, we had to see people, you know, like get their all the people that we like get into the positions that we wanted them to get into. Like Sam just is a maester now, even though he fucks.
He's the Grand Maester.
Yeah, he just fucks now. But like, I guess maesters can fuck. And people's takes are like, Sam introducing democracy, and everybody laughing it off. It's like, are you fucking stupid? Like, everybody laughed off no lord is gonna be like, yeah, we should definitely do democracy. Like, they're kind of doing like a version of it where all like it's an oligarchy, and they're gonna like pick the king that way instead of like fucking to become the king, which is a better system than fucking. But like,
But there were versions of democracy in Westeros before. It's not an unheard of concept. So the Night's Watch, we've seen them have a vote on who's going to be the next Lord Commander. That's their system.
but they're also, it's like a prison colony.
Yeah.
that they don't have like a lot of rights.
But in addition, there's also what the Iron Islands do, which we got to see a couple seasons ago, where it's not exactly a vote, but it is basically like a rally where they make a lot of speeches and then the people like cheer loudest for who they want to be their king. Like, it is sort of it is more of an oligarchy because it's really mostly the lords who
Right.
get to go to that meeting.
The problem with the Iron Islands, though, is that everyone is a dipshit there, and
True.
is like they're literally just like from Ohio, so like, of course they would just cheer for the guy who or girl who just like is like, I fuck the best, I'm gonna kill like and get like food from the mainland the best, or be like yeah, fuck, like that guy's cool. So I don't know. I think that it's one thing to just like do your take on Twitter and be like, Sam like had the best idea and everyone like fuck this show, but it's like, no, like that makes sense for the
No, it
lords
does
to
make
say,
sense
like,
that for most of them
to say fuck off, Sam, you dumb bitch.
they wouldn't let go of their power
Right.
like that.
Yeah.
Right.
I think the killing Danny, I mean, it had to happen in that thing. There's the whole scene leading up to it that should be taught in film classes, where they did like
Oh
the
my
dragon
God.
wings and
That's,
stuff.
yeah, let's talk about that shot that got some mockery on Twitter for that.
It's a
guy's
good
tweet.
shot, but like,
Oh, I hated it.
It's not like, I mean, like, it's a cool shot that's like, okay, we do this CGI thing where like Danny's like dragon, it's like, oh, she's the dragon. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, I get that.
I rolled my eyes so hard when that happened. It was like, it's just so obvious.
It's so on the nose
Yeah.
and so corny, but it's like, it's so cool, but like, I don't know. It's there's better shots, like better
most,
shots in
yeah.
the history of film. Like, shut up, dude.
Yeah.
But
anyway.
what else? Yeah, the conversation, like you said, I think it like for some points that Tyrion had.
Other than
it's,
that,
like,
I thought it was a pretty good scene.
yeah, I think it's a good scene because it's like it relates back to it. Was it in the first episode where he's just like them, Jon and Tyrion, like they have the conversation where Tyrion's just like, gotta be a bastard, man. You just like wear that on your sleeve.
Yeah,
like,
it's
don't let it
early in
hurt.
season
Yeah,
one,
early in
yeah.
season one. So it like harkens back to that like initial conversation between the two, kind of where it's like it's Tyrion giving Jon advice again. Because Jon's very conflicted, and like how he was conflicted in the first season, where he's like, "Am I a Stark really? Like, all my fake mom hates me. Like, I don't feel included, and like I got a white dog where everybody got a gray dog. Like, that ain't right." Like the white sheep of the family there.
Yeah. And actually, to go off on Tyrion for a second, it was kind of a throwaway line. It was kind of a joke, but the idea that he was completely left out of A Song of Ice and Fire, the history that the Archmaester wrote of the war, is like, how do you leave him out? Like, who do you say killed Tywin Lannister? Like, who do you say was the hand of the Queen to Daenerys for a while?
I think
like,
that-
how do you leave him? It was kind of just like a joke, but like, honestly, how do you leave him out of it?
I think they just wrote that as a joke. I re-round because I thought they said like Maester Martin, and I thought that would have been I would have been like, that is too on the nose.
No.
Like, I would have still laughed, but I would have been like, that would have been too corny and on the nose for it. But I think the reason why they left him out is because like I know that George R. R. Martin says like his favorite character to write is Tyrion.
Yeah.
So they just were like, oh, he's completely out of the book.
And, you know, on a funny note, you know who George R. R. Martin says is the hardest character for him to write? It's Bran.
Oh. Probably because he's like, oh, Bran's gonna be king. And he's like,
Actually, it's because he's the youngest.
He's like 13,
Yeah,
right?
He's like even younger in the books.
He's like 10.
Yeah, something like that.
Shout out to
He's like young as shit.
Shout
in
out to
the books.
10-year-old kings. They've always made good decisions.
He might
in
even
Game
be
of
like
Thrones.
9 or even like 7 when it starts. I don't remember. He's young. Everyone's young.
I mean, he was like 7 when it started, right?
Something like that.
What else happens in that episode? Sansa's independent.
Yeah,
She's a free bitch. She don't give a
Sansa
shit.
gets a good ending.
She don't need no man.
I think I thought she was going to end up as the Lady of Winterfell, ending up as Queen of the North. I'm good with that. It's an upgrade.
Yeah.
I think they treated Sansa pretty well in the final season, especially compared to how they've treated her the last few. So I'm happy with how she ended.
She like figured out all the political stuff, and then she's on the thing. I'm glad she got her moment with Sandor too.
Yeah, I'm really glad we got another moment with Sandor for sure.
Can we rewind? I think the reason why I do like episode 5 the best is because we got
Clegane
Clegane Ball.
I gotta say, it's like one of the stupidest things, but like I enjoyed it. Like it was.
It's how it had to end. It's how it had to end between those two. Obviously, they're both dying in some sort of fashion. That's how it goes down in the books. It's how it goes down in the books. But like,
it may or may not. He's kind of on like they gestured at his like redemption, like his personal redemption in the show a little bit when he was with those religious people. He's doing a version of that in the book. Some people think that might stick.
Remember when Ian McShay was not Euron?
Yeah, that would have been a great casting.
Idiots.
If you were. Oh my god.
He would have been so much better at being Euron than this year. Although I do love this Euron because, like I said, love the Ironborn, bunch of scumbag dirtbags.
So I guess the next Stark to talk about would probably be Arya. Her ending is that she's
or should we say Arya?
Yeah, I kind of like her ending too. I like that the season saw her being humanized and choosing life and not death and getting to... I thought she was doomed. If I thought any character was for sure dying this season, my money was on Arya. So I'm really surprised she lived. I don't hate it though. An interesting thing is George R.R. Martin wrote Fire and Blood, which is a history of the Targaryen reign in Westeros. Mm-hmm. It came out last year. It's really great. I recommend you buy it, read it, support George R.R. Martin. Not that he needs the money, but he's just really good. And in that book is a story of a woman named Alyssa Farman who does what Arya does. She sails west of Westeros, and we do get a couple interesting hints about what she might have found. So I wonder if the writers either got that idea from Fire and Blood, or if that was the ending George always intended for Arya and put Alyssa Farman in Fire and Blood as kind of a foreshadowing of Arya's fate. I wonder which way it goes.
Doesn't she say somewhere in Game of Thrones or in the books that she wants to go west?
I don't remember.
I thought she does at some point. But
recall.
I also like people online were like, well, why? Like no one knows this west of Westeros. Does Bran know? And it's like, no, he doesn't know. Like he doesn't. He can't see everybody in the world. He just knows like the future of Westeros and like the past. Right?
I think it is confined mostly to Westeros because that's where the Weirwoods are.
Yeah,
like it's the Weirwood power.
He's a tree man. Like he only understands what the trees know, and if there aren't Weirwood trees west of Westeros, then how would he know, right?
Yeah.
So fuck off, stupid people. Pay attention to the show.
And if you want to find out what Arya may or may not find there, check out Fire and Blood.
Yeah, read the books.
Honestly, at this point, I'm just going to say, A Song of Ice and Fire, so much better than Game of Thrones. Not over yet, but I think it will end more satisfyingly as well. It's a big commitment to get into, but I recommend you read the books.
I'm going to read them, maybe.
Yeah, there's a lot of them.
What else happened in that episode? I think I think meeting the Prince of Dorne was he's pretty hot. I do love how like
silly.
Dorne just never gets mentioned ever. Just like they're mentions like the new Prince of Dorne supports Daenerys, and then
it's like, who is he? How did he get chosen? Where's he? Who's his family? They killed everyone. Like all the characters we knew from Dorne died.
Literally, Dorne is like really interesting because it's like like all the Westerosi like cultures, like we're kind of bohemian. It's kind of like if the Ironborn and like the Iron Islands are like Ohio. I'm saying that like Dorne's like the progressive part of Florida. Like it's like Dorne's like Miami, right? Where like they're just a bunch of tan people just fucking all the time, like partying, doing whatever. Like they can be like a little vicious at some points. Like they have honor and respect, and they don't want people like creeping up in their hood because they're on like the Dornish or at least the Martells. At least they're the house that they didn't bend down to the Targaryens when they ruled, right?
Yeah, Dorne was the one that Aegon the Conqueror could not successfully conquer. It took a long time to bring Dorne into the fold.
Yeah, Dorne was just like, yeah, whatever, come down and fight us, like, let's go. But they just they're never mentioned in this season at all. They have no influence whatsoever because they just were like, well, everybody hated when we went down to Dorne.
Yeah.
Well, it's not our fault. It's you wrote it poorly, dude. I want to see some of these cool guys, like. I don't know. I like Dorne. I think they should have honestly, I think their strategy should have been everyone retreat back to Dorne. Because what are they going to do? Like, the White Walkers would come down. They're fucking sunny all the time down there. Like, they're just going to melt in the ice.
It's always sunny in Dorne.
It's always sunny in Dorne. So, wait. Edmund Tully's still alive?
Yeah.
That was him, right?
Because if you remember, Jaime Lannister was like, we will basically let you
They killed
live.
the Blackfish.
Yeah, we will let you live if you take the castle for us, like tell your men to stand down, but the Blackfish won't stand down, so they have him killed.
They kill the Blackfish, but okay.
But Edric gets to live. I mean, not Edric, Edmure.
Edmure. I thought it was Edmund.
Edmure.
Because he's like, the Tully's were not important forever. Like, they were pretty important in, like, the earlier seasons when it was Rob's Rebellion and everything.
Yeah, and Catelyn was
and
still
Catelyn
around,
was there.
yeah.
Or other Rob's Rebellion, the Clash of Kings. Like, yeah, of course they're going to be important because it's like they're supporting the Starks in this effort. But they don't even, like, show up to support the Starks in the Battle of Winterfell, right? Like, when they come up to fight the White Walkers, at least. Like,
yeah.
maybe not when the Boltons are there. But he just, like, is like, okay, I'm just going to show up here and, like...
I think at that point, the Tullys weren't really a real force. Like, the Freys, I think, had Riverrun at that point, so the Tullys didn't have their actual house.
Arya, I'm talking about when they fought against the White Walkers.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Arya had already killed all the Freys.
So why didn't... Come on, man.
So what the fuck was Edgar doing?
That's
Yeah.
your sister's kid. Like, and you're gonna fucking not help him out. What a pussy.
I guess they'd all been kind of like decimated.
Good for Sansa for saying shut the fuck up, because he's just a pussy. Like, get out of here. So I guess can we talk about Jon then?
Yeah, let's talk about Jon. His ending made sense, I think.
I think so. You got to pet his dog again.
Yeah.
Pretty cool. I'm a fan of petting dogs.
The story starts with him deciding to go north, go to the Wall. He's a bastard and he doesn't have a place. And at the end of the story, he still doesn't have a place. And that's actually really sad. His arc is actually...
You could say it might be bittersweet.
Yeah, it is. Which is what George has always said it will be. I thought it was kind of poignant going north again, but this time with a lot of people behind him. And, he actually will probably... I think their goal is to, re-inhabit the north, make it livable.
He's the next Mance Raider.
Pretty much, yeah. And I think that worked really well for me. I didn't love the final episode. It was not the worst episode of the season by any means. But I liked that ending for Jon.
What are the Night's Watch actually doing, though, now?
Yeah, I think... So in the show, it makes it really clear that once they killed the Night King, all the other White Walkers went down with him. So I think in the show, the White Walkers are done. Like, they're dead. They're over. There's no more White Walkers. So there doesn't really need to be a Night's Watch anymore unless the Wildlings are going to go back to warring on the North, which is no longer part of the Seven Kingdoms.
Right. But that's the weird part is that, like, okay, if the Wall is technically part of the North, which is an independent state now, because Sansa's like, I'm independent.
Yeah.
I am running for president as an independent candidate. But so that's independent. If the Wall is part of the North, does that mean, like, how does the King's Landing people have any jurisdiction about who goes there, right? Is it just a prison colony where people just, like, sit and, like, look out and, like, look at the wall all day? Or just are like, I guess we'll just go to hang out here? And
I think the honest answer is...
Brings up a lot more questions.
There is no answer. Like, the writers didn't really consider it.
I guess they're like, we're restructuring how our penal system works. Right now, we still have the Wall, so we're just gonna send Jon there. He could just do whatever he wants because everybody loves Jon up there. And literally, like, all those Night Watch guys are like dead, right? They all got fucked up by the White Walkers, the ones that were left.
Well, the characters we knew, like the characters we actually like followed, yeah, they died. There's probably still other people there, but we don't know them.
Yeah, I think Jon's ending was fine. I don't see anything really wrong with it. I'm glad that he got to live, and honestly, I believe more of his... Yeah, I know that's like, yeah, like he loves Dany, right? That's like the ultimate thing that he had to kill, like his love to save the world in general, like, or at least save Westeros from this like tyrannical ruler that was gonna like continue to conquest and cause more chaos and destruction, right? And that her way of breaking the wheel might not have been the best way. And John's always like questioning, like, how do you know? Because he's a stupid idiot. So like, he's like, how do you know? He's like, I don't know, really. It's not really. Does it sound like it's a good idea? But I don't know. I just never really bought the relationship between the two. Like, yeah, it's just like we got to get the aunt and the nephew together because we love incest on this incest show. But I really thought that like the better relationship was between him and Ygritte. Like I still feel that he like haven't like him like Ygritte dying in front of him like kind of like had a more of an effect on him than I mean like it felt like it at least than I mean the whole Daenerys thing. I think the Daenerys thing just had to happen because that's the plot and that's just what's gonna happen there. And I don't know, it just felt forced to me, like the whole relationship.
Yeah, I think Kit Harington and Emilia Clarke did not have the best chemistry together. Apparently in real life they're actually like really friends and like they goof around.
They dated in real life too, I think.
No, well Kit Harington and Rose Leslie, who plays Ygritte, they're married in real life.
That's actually good.
They're married in real life,
but
so their chemistry was
at the beginning
real.
of the show. I could be totally off base.
I hadn't heard about that, but they did not have chemistry on screen. I think they're really just like friends, and it was weird. Apparently, it was like really weird for them to kiss, is what I heard. So their chemistry didn't really work for me, and the relationship never felt super urgent.
No.
But I will say this, I thought Emilia Clarke really brought her A game to the final season. She hasn't always been my favorite actor on the show, but in season 8, I thought she did her best work of the series. I thought she really went out on a high note performance-wise, even if people have quibbles with how her character was written, which I do. I think Emilia Clarke sold it as well as she could have in episode 5, in episode 6, in episode 4. Like, she sold the arc as well as she was able to. Mm-hmm. And Kit Harington in episode 6, I really saw the struggle between, killing Dany and loving Dany. And when he was talking to Tyrion and when he killed her. And I really thought that the two of them, even though their chemistry basically didn't exist, in the actual scenes they had with other people and for their own arcs, I thought they sold it.
I think like I could agree with you in the later part of the season, but like throughout the whole rise, it was just kind of like I wasn't really into it. I just felt forced, and because like this had to happen for the plot, and then but when he gets to like the moment where he has to stab him, I mean, it's just like they brought it at that point where it's like, okay, like yeah, the character really does like feel the way that they need to feel in this sort of situation, is conflicted, and like you can see it on his face, like he's super conflicted when he stabs her. I mean, overall, I still think it was a good scene. I think that, I mean, again, had to happen for the plot. Shout out to Drogon, best dragon. What did you think about him burning the Iron Throne?
I mean, I felt like the Iron Throne had to be destroyed by the end of the show. That seems obvious. The fact that Drogon did it makes a certain amount of sense. Yeah, I mean, he can sit in his wheelchair. Or on a weirwood tree. But the Iron Throne was forged by a dragon. It could only probably be destroyed by a dragon. So that makes sense. How Drogon knew that was the symbol of power that merited destruction, I don't know. I thought it was kind of a silly moment. It worked really well thematically.
Yeah.
But it's one of those moments, like, it's kind of like Arya finding the horse in episode 5. It's like, okay, thematically and, like, emotionally, that's kind of a good moment. But, like, what actually just happened?
I like how she doesn't have the horse anymore in episode 6.
Yeah, it's just, really...
just fucked off.
I wonder if it was, like, all in her imagination. But, no, exactly. It's one of those moments that's like, okay, that thematically works, but, like, what is this... actually what's happening?
Well, I mean, like the horse is there and it's like it's death on a white horse.
Yeah.
So like cool, everybody loves doing that, but like it's just, it was weird. I don't know.
Yeah.
It just, I like that it did fuck off though.
But what did you think about the Drogon burning the throne?
It was just really funny. Like, it was like, oh yeah, like I know that John's not gonna die from this fire. What would have been cool is that like he tries to blow the fire on Jon and John's just like doesn't affect him because like John's the dragon actually. I didn't think that was actually gonna happen. I think that like when he was gonna do the fire, he was like, oh yeah, he's just burning the fire at this point. I do like how he just like picked up Daenerys and was like, peace. Like, I'm out. And everyone's like, okay, I guess that sucks. It's like there's a dragon that's just flying around somewhere that could potentially come back and like kill everybody if it wanted to, but like we don't know. It's just a wild animal now. Let the dragons be free.
People have pointed out that in the end, in the small council scene, Sam says there are reports of, and it sounds like he's saying Drogon flying over Volantis. if he flew from King's Landing to Volantis, some people think he's probably heading to Valyria. That makes a lot of sense. In Season 5, when Tyrion and Jorah sailed through Valyria, we saw a dragon flying overhead. That was probably Drogon. It must have been Drogon.
Oh,
so
right.
it makes sense that Drogon would return to Valyria, which is the Targaryen homeland that has been destroyed by fire.
They just want to go back to Valyria? Is that just, like, native in them? It's like when gooses fly south. Dragons just gotta fly to Valyria.
But yeah, I think it makes sense on a certain level that Drogon would return to Valyria. I mean, that's a nice resting place for Dany, I guess.
This homeland you never got to see.
Yeah.
Your dumb ancestors. What else? What do you think about the small council?
So, Brienne is Lord Commander. Awesome. Perfect. Nothing wrong with that. Sam as the
Lord Commander?
Yeah, she's the Lord Commander of the Kingsguard. Of the Kingsguard.
I didn't know Lord Commander was also what they gave the Kingsguard.
Yeah, Lord Commander of the Kings is the title for Kingsguard and the title for
I didn't know.
the Night's Watch. Yeah. So Brienne as Lord Commander of the Kingsguard makes a lot of sense. Sam as the Grand Maester also makes a lot of sense. Bronn somehow kicking it. He's at the high peaks of power
Bronn
now.
is just like, it's that character that people liked, so HBO was like, keep putting Bronn and stuff, even though he sucks. Like, he's kind of annoying, and like, yeah, he's funny at some points, but
he did not need to be in this season at all.
He just doesn't need to do anything ever. Like,
No.
he just needed to be like, people like him and like that he tells jokes.
Honestly, he should have died in the loot train attack in season 7.
The loot train, I have a problem with the loot train because it's just like there's no real stakes there. Like, nobody important dies.
No,
and
yeah.
it's just like, not even like, yeah, like, obviously if Jaime's there, he's not going to die, but at least fucking kill Bronn. Like, come on.
It would have made a lot of sense.
She's fucking dragons.
And who else is there in that scene?
Davos.
Davos.
Ships.
Right, he's Master of Ships.
Woo!
That makes a lot of sense.
Big pirate there.
And I guess, you know what? Let's pivot into Tyrion. We haven't talked about his ending yet.
Good for that guy, because he's the real king. That's all he wanted. He was a great, like, all these people in King's Landing, like, resent him, even though, like, he always saved their asses and shit, and always tried to do the right thing. However, he hasn't, like, he was, like, supposed to be the smartest person in the show, but in the later seasons, he makes really bad decisions and does a lot of dumb shit.
Yeah, he does.
And I don't know if it's just because it's like he went to Essos and like started believing in Dany, and then that just made him dumber, or if like he just I don't know if
I think it's just bad writing. Like
I think it was just bad writing.
It's stuff like what they do with Sansa between seasons like 5 and 7. It's like I can't even pin it down to like character motivations. It's just bad writing.
Yeah. Oh well, when you don't have a good thing to adapt anymore, and you're not a good writer, when you're like that's a thing. Like you look at like you go on IMDb. You look up David Benioff and you're like, oh, this is the guy who wrote X-Men Origins Wolverine. It's like, of course this is going to be a shitty time. Like, Marvel writing isn't good to begin with. If you're adapting something to like an origin story of, this is going to be bad. Like,
he wrote, I think, the book 25th Hour, which is well reviewed, and Spike Lee turned it into a good movie. So, you know, they've done stuff that's good, I guess, but yeah, I think they just didn't have it in them to keep this story going after a certain point, once they ran out of material.
It's like that meme where it's like, yo, copy my homework, but only change a little, right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't look like that you're copying the homework. And that's like I said at the beginning, like, it's what adaptation essentially is. It's just like taking something, right? Adapting it to a different form and making it work for that form. And when there isn't anything else to adapt, it's hard to do an adaptation of something, right? Because it's not, you have to write it like how you would write it in like a film, right? So like if I'm adapting a book to a film, I have to write it, translate what they were trying to get like in the book here to the filmic language to make it all make sense, right? When there isn't anything for me to adapt and I have to just start thinking of it, I can still write it in the filmic language, but these are still not my characters, you know? I might know them to like a certain point, that I'm familiar with them enough that I could write how they would be, but I'm not going to have that same kind of nuance that the actual author who knows the characters is going to have. And that's just what clearly happened with this show.
Yeah, I think it's, you know, he told them the basic bullet points for the ending, and they started just driving towards that at the loss of all else, at the loss of subtlety, at the loss of, you know, little character moments that they kind of got rid of. They were just like, we're driving towards these endpoints. We're getting out. We're just filling in the gaps.
We're pulling out because this is like we're not doing this for the rest of our lives, and I don't blame them. Like I I don't think it's like, oh, it's something that we're owed to as an audience, as fans of the show, as consumers of the product, right? I think it's just like, this is a product that they're putting out. This is where they're going to go with it. They're going to try like the best that they can to wrap it up in the way that they want to, but they're moving on after this. They're going to go do something else. It's something that isn't going to be, we all know it wasn't going to be around forever. We're like, it's going to have to end eventually, and the books are going to have to end eventually as well, but their heart and soul, like, was in it from the beginning, and then at some point when I don't know if when they started adapting it without George's influence or without the books and everything, or they're like, oh shit, this is harder than we thought it was going to be. Like, we gotta grind down and get it to where we need to finish it out, so we can just get the fuck out. Because maybe they really felt that, like, I don't know, I can't speak for them, but maybe they were like, we're not going to be able to deliver in the TV show form what the books can deliver. So why not make our own thing, try to deliver the best that we can get to. And I think they did it, not like the way that they got there. It wasn't the best. It was a bumpy road, but we got there. We got to where they wanted to go, and I don't want to say like anything like, I mean we already kind of crapped on them, right? We already kind of said that they were bad, but I don't think that it was like, I think they did the best that they could. I'm not like going out in the future and being like, oh, their Star Wars project's gonna fucking suck, right? I'm gonna go into it with an open mind if I am interested in whatever they're doing. Or is it just like another movie, or?
Yeah, they're making another movie. It's probably gonna be another trilogy.
Okay, well, I mean, I'm gonna go into it with an open mind, but that's a whole another discussion for another time. It's just, it's hard.
It is hard because,
right?
you know, like you said before, it's characters we've lived with for years and come to love and feel like a little bit of ownership over, even if that's not true. We don't have ownership over them. The writers do. And I do think you're right that the show needs to be its own thing and forge its own path. I think the problem came in setup that wasn't necessarily paid off, things that they cut that had a ripple effect that they didn't necessarily anticipate or plan for. So, like I said before, seasons 1 through 4, I stand by, I think are really good. And obviously, they were in charge of seasons 1 through 4.
Right.
They wrote episodes in seasons 1 through 4 that are good episodes. It's not like they're bad writers. But, yeah, I mean, if we're looking at the end of the show, they flubbed it.
They flubbed it. I think that they have these themes, right, that were introduced first season, continue out throughout the entire show, and I don't think a lot of those themes were delivered upon, right? Yeah. And, like, I think that they got too entangled into plot, and I think that, I'm going to do it. If you look at The Sopranos... like the thematic consistency with like The Sopranos, right? It's there throughout every single season, and obviously The Sopranos is its own original content that's kind of like driven by a group of like, it's a group of writers, but still ran by like one guy and like the same type of people who know those characters so well. And I want to just, it's also like a controversial ending to a show that.
It shouldn't be.
It shouldn't be, but it is. Great. But it is still that they just cut to black, right? But a lot of the themes of The Sopranos, it's just like this. It's always seen from an unreliable like narrators, and it's about life and death and how it can be so sudden. Like, you can just be out of it in like there's a scene in it where they're like, you probably don't even know it happens when it happens to you. Right, they like talk about it while they're on like a boat. There's another scene in it where someone gets whacked and like it's just like a noise, like a screeching noise, and you don't even like the sound like cuts out. Besides that, right? Like, this Game of Thrones show is about, like I said from the beginning, it's about power and how much power doesn't really matter in the end. And all that this was about power and who got it, right? And just like that a good person got, like, not even a good person, that a computer got power, right? That's managed by these people who have good intentions. We're going to try to use this computer guy as...
It doesn't even solve the problem for the long term.
It doesn't solve the problem for the long term.
Is there going to be another three-eyed raven to forever take up the throne? Or that doesn't sound like the plan. It sounds like it's going to be the Lord's choosing new people.
It's just like we're going to get a bunch of good people with good intentions, and we're going to try to...
How? Where?
But how are we going to do that? And obviously, like, the themes of Game of Thrones are... like, it's harder to comment on those kind of things because in our world we still don't really fucking know what's the best power struggle.
Answer.
right? And they don't have a perfect answer either, but what they're going to do, I mean, they're going to try to continue the same power structure that they have been trying before, just in a different way, where they don't have, like, a chromosome, like, stupid bastard kid ruling, not even a bastard, just like an incestuous kid, like, ruling over the throne, right? Because that's mainly who's been on the throne throughout the entire time, like, results of incest, correct?
Yeah, for the most, I mean,
so, like,
largely.
I mean, they don't have the science to back it up, but they're like, it's been not good so far, so maybe we'll try something a little different. And it's good that they're going in that direction, and it just doesn't feel satisfying in what they've set up. And
yeah, and clearly we're not averse to an ending that avoids an easy satisfaction. Like, The Sopranos doesn't end in a traditionally satisfying way, but I think it's a brilliant ending.
But because it's reinforced by the themes of the show that you've been seeing throughout the entire time. And the themes of this show that you've been seeing throughout the entire time is that there's this power, like, it's a power structure, it's about power, but about how all this power is just not, there's a greater force that's going to make this not matter. And then eventually it does matter. Like, it's the only thing that matters is this power structure. And it's disappointing. Like, that's what's disappointing.
Yeah.
That's why it feels so lackluster, is because it's like, yeah, we find out who gets to win the Game of Thrones, but we already been shown that it's meaningless.
Right. Yeah, I agree with you completely. Probably time to wrap it up. Do you have any final thoughts on Game of Thrones, the episode, any other characters we didn't get to?
Shoutouts to Pod fucks. Shoutouts to Hot Pie fucks. Shoutouts to Gendry fucks. Shoutouts to who else fucks? Shoutouts to everybody in Karth, the greatest city in the world. Shoutouts to Bravos, the Bravosi, that actress lady. She was pretty cool. She played Cersei. Pretty cool shit. Shoutouts to Quaithe. Anybody remember Quaithe?
Boy, did she not matter.
Shoutouts to Melly. She couldn't have done it without you, sister. Shoutouts to who else can we shoutouts to? You got any shoutouts? That's about it for me, actually. Oh, shoutouts to all Ironborn. Every single one of them.
I'd like to give a shout out to Stannis, the
oh my god, shout
the
out
one
to
true king.
Stannis, the one true king.
Shout out to Renly. What a bro.
Gay student in the show. Shout out to Renly.
Loras was way gayer than Renly.
Loras is pretty gay. Loras got conversion therapy, so he's fine. Shout out to the High Sparrow. He's cool as shit. Shout out, Beric Dondarrion, the realest one.
Shout out to Barristan Selmy, Gone Before Your Time.
Oh my god. And yeah, that's about it. That's all the shoutouts I got.
That's it. That's it for Failson Film Pod this episode. That's it for Game of Thrones.
Failson Film School.
Yeah, you can find us on Twitter. You can find me at Story Politics.
At Luke Hennigan. That's the Twitter handle.
And you can find the Failson Film School Twitter at Failson Film Pod.
Don't listen to any other podcast but this one. They're all crap.
All right. See you in another 2 weeks.
See you in another life, brother. That's a different show.
Maybe we'll get to that.
We're never gonna get to that.